Chapter 35, Wharf by the Bay, Nightingale Terrace, San Francisco, California, June 1st, 1968. In the middle of dinner before the Kennedy-McCarthy debate, Patch was called away to a phone call. Denali had placed the call from New York City. A certain tension resided in his southern drawl.
First on the agenda, I apologize for dragging you away from dinner.
It's okay, sir. What do you have?
First, I've worked through operatives to keep Finch out of the campaign. Intel agencies are very cagey. I don't trust them. In the Indianapolis photos, the second man in the photos with Finch is a CIA mind control expert named Jerry Earhart, California.
Not good.
That's why it's vital to scan these rallies. And now, Patch, here's the breaking news. Then you can get back to your dinner. Again, I apologize. Gaulle has shaken up his cabinet, 8 ministers. They feel that this action gives de Gaulle a political advantage. 3,000 demonstrators stormed the French embassy in Rome, supporting their comrades inside France itself. What does all this mean to our marching orders?
I have a sneaking suspicion the report is involved.
You're correct. We've yet to find Bellini, but Alex Girard is dead.
What?
His body was found floating in the Seine this morning. Poisoned.
Why was he in France? Asked Patch.
We think he was in France to meet Bellini. At least that's what the de Gaulle people think. Attempts to reconstruct the report without the raw data have been fruitless.
Who is Bellini?
We don't know.
Then we don't know if Girard was there to meet Bellini.
You're right. That was speculation on my part. You know our intel said Girard mentioned Bellini. Our contacts are searching Paris and around the surrounding cities for Bellini.
Good.
Keep your eyes and ears open for Finch. Check in on a daily basis, Patch. Thank you and good luck. Begin transmission.
Kennedy-McCarthy debate, KGO Studios, San Francisco, California, June 1st, 1968, 6:22 p.m. Vietnam combat deaths, June 1968, 536. Natalie glanced at the console TV and then turned to Patch as he hung up the phone. What did he say? He's cleared us for the Mendacious Ranch before what he calls the victory party at the Ambassador. I could use a couple days next to the pool, said Natalie. Make that a double, waitress. You're sounding like Tom. I don't know if that's a compliment or not. Yabba dabba do. Problem is, we have to finish up. Patch fell back in the chair. The debate was not on the console TV yet. Bobby still has a grueling schedule. Down to LA, back up here. We pick it up in San Diego, Long Beach, and Watts. Then we go out to Corona. Suppose we shouldn't complain. Can you imagine how tired Bobby is? Nope, I can't. Denali thinks the de Gaulle report is in Paris. He thinks somebody else knew about that too, and that's why Girard was killed. He wants us to go to Paris. Once the primaries are over, Bobby will win in New York. No rest for the weary. Patch smelled the pizza before Tom carried the pizza boxes into the hotel room. Rose had the Heinekens. Up front on the 25-inch console TV, several commentators were talking about the Kennedy-McCarthy debate. Do you know Eugene spent last night at Dodger Stadium? Bobby was cramming with Ted Sorensen and the boys, said Tom, setting the boxes on the table. He flipped open the top box. Dig in, fearsome foursome. McCarthy's elitism will get the better of him, said Patch. Who the hell does he think he is not studying for a debate? Bobby went on for another 2 hours this morning at the Fairmont Hotel, said Tom. Just shows McCarthy is a one-trick pony, Pouch. That's the truth, said Natalie. Andy distorts Bobby's record, said Rose. I don't like him. He won't last, babe, said Tom. He's dealing with the Kennedys, for God's sakes. Rose, Patch, and Natalie let out a collective laugh. How do you really feel about it, Tommy? It's like Ali versus Ernie Terrell. I saw the fight, said Patch. Ali versus anybody if they let him fight again. said Natalie. Amen, said Tom, looking out the window as he bit into the pepperoni pizza. Do you know we missed the whole Kennedy entourage at Fisherman's during lunch? You're kidding, said Patch. That's what the waitress in the pizzeria said. What are you doing talking to the waitress in the pizzeria? Asked Rose sarcastically. When you've got it, you've got it. Well, don't count on getting it, said Rose as Patch laughed. Come on, you two, said Natalie. They're going to start the debate. ABC reporters Bill Lawrence, Frank Reynolds, and Bob Clark sat in a half circle of yellow swivel chairs with a tiny table in the middle. Patch thought there were about 100 people in the studio. Kennedy was separated by a reporter from McCarthy. Tom was the first to call out the debate as being boring. Nothing substantial was happening. McCarthy performed a quiet tap dance about any difference between Bobby and himself.
He has said he'd take some responsibility for it. The question is how much responsibility. I was talking more about the process. I said this is one of the things we ought to talk about. It's the process by which decisions were made with reference to this war.
Well, I was a member of the National Security Council for 3.5 years and was involved in some of those matters during that period of time in connection with Latin America and in connection with Africa, with the Test Ban Treaty, and I suppose the most critical crisis that's ever been faced by mankind, the Cuban Missile Crisis in October of 1962. I don't think that we can ignore the rest of the world. I don't think we can act as if it doesn't exist and separate ourselves from the rest of the world. And we have to be obviously interested and concerned about what occurs elsewhere. But what I think we have to make it clear, and which we did, I think, during the early 1960s, was that we can't be the nation's policeman. We cannot settle every struggle or every problem that exists everywhere, all over the globe, and the internal struggle that goes on between one power group versus another power group within, whether it's Latin America or whether it's in Asia. On the other hand, we can't ignore what happens. For instance, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the missiles coming into Cuba. What if the same kind of arrangement was made in another Latin American country? That threatens our national security. We not only have, therefore, some national responsibility and possibly a moral responsibility in some ways, but we also have an arrangement that meeting our national security needs is vital and terribly important for the next generation of Americans, because we now have the weapons that can destroy all of mankind. In the last analysis, however, it's up to the people of California and it's up to the people of the United States to make their judgment and determination about any of us. I'm going to dedicate myself, no matter what happens, to the betterment and improvement of this country and the people, and the choice really is up to you, and I'm glad that it is that way.
Senator McCarthy? I've served in the Congress for 20 years, 10 years in the House and 10 years in the Senate, and in that time I think I've served on nearly every one of the critical committees. I've served on agriculture. I think I know something.
You see how McCarthy is speaking to the country? Bobby is speaking to the people of the state where he's running, especially minorities. He's going to win this whole flipping thing. Thank you, Walter Cronkite, said Rose.
Well, I think what I've said is that as Attorney General, I was the chief law enforcement officer, and I know how important it is that we abide by the law, and violence and rioting and lawlessness cannot be tolerated in the United States. A high administration official said a short time ago that we can expect rioting summer after summer. I don't think that's acceptable in the United States. I would help police departments through funds. I would help in the experience that we've gained over the period of the last several years. When I was Attorney General of the United States, we had a riot at the University of Mississippi, and yet no one.
He's making McCarthy look as if he doesn't care about Negroes, said Tom.
Kept a mob under control, and the
Tom wiped his mouth and grabbed another slice of pizza. McCarthy isn't able to say that Bobby won't debate him. Patch leaned forward as RFK brought his arguments to the minority voters in California.
I've gone into the ghettos, I've gone and talked to the Indians or Mexican Americans or whatever group, and said we can't solve these problems overnight. They cannot be solved by violence and lawlessness. But what we can do is to start at least providing jobs and employment for people. I think we have to provide jobs, with the government being the employer of the last resort, and then bringing the private sector in a major way and hiring people, doing as much as possible with the welfare system, the handout of the dole, and getting people jobs by giving the private sector tax incentives and tax credits.
Well, RFK did his homework and McCarthy didn't. Now he's got San Diego and Long Beach. And he was aggressive, said Patch. You're right on, Pouch. Chapter 36. After dinner, Tom brought the Bonneville up the ramp to the 405 freeway. I've never seen so many lanes on a highway in my life. Freeway, Rose told him, having persuaded him to finally raise the convertible top. Freeway screamer. I'm looking forward to seeing Natalie and Patch again. Old Pouch, let's see if they'll come back to New York with us. Tom accelerated back toward L.A. In the hazy afternoon sun, the temperature had been pleasant at Sail Beach this afternoon, not the scorching heat he had expected. He had not counted on the waves being so high. He never saw waves like this on Cape Cod. What do you think Bobby will say tonight, Tom? I think he'll be ecstatic. I'm waiting to see if McCarthy steps out of the race. It's always good to win. He could. Tom checked his watch. We've got some time before we meet them. Let's ride around Wilshire in the city. Well, it's cleaner than Boston, said Rose, gawking out the window. You look like a typical tourist, Rose. Yabba-dabba-doo. Tom smiled, but nearly swiped a hitchhiker in a dark sweater and light pants. Mexican? Now, how do you know that? His dark curly hair, it's obvious. You're prejudiced, said Rose. Hell no, he said, looking in the mirror. He's a Mexican, that's what he is. I ought to go back there and, like I always say, don't get involved. How's your sunburn? Asked Tom, still looking in the rearview mirror. Better. The sun is stronger here. I keep forgetting that. Tom pulled over to an ice cream place. He had chocolate, she had vanilla out on the terrace. Don't you think it's weird we ran into Patch and Natalie? Why? They're interested in the campaign, just like we are. No, there's something secretive there, said Tom. I swear, Tom, not everything's a conspiracy. It'll all come out in the wash. Tom drove around the block a couple times, passing a brightly lit store, which turned out to be a political headquarters for Senator Churchill. The same man he had almost hit a half an hour ago was dressed differently, but in a blue coat as he approached the headquarters. That's him! That's the hitchhiker! That's not him. This guy is shorter and dressed differently, said Rose as they passed. And furthermore, Tom Cortlandt, don't you go starting something. No, Rosie, I'm heading for the ambassador. 10:45 p.m., the Ambassador Hotel, Los Angeles, California. The cars were packed so tight at the Ambassador, prompting Tom to drive through a tunnel under the hotel. That's when he saw the hitchhiker, who stepped out in front of a parked car in the tunnel. A woman and two men waved goodbye as the hitchhiker headed for the underground entrance. All right, all right. The other guy looks like him. Rosie, why don't you go in and meet Pouch and Nat in the big room? The embassy room. Right, I'll find a spot to park on the 8th Street lot on the other side. Tom, occasionally you come up with a good idea. Tom squinted. Quiet, I'll catch you in a few. Rose blew a kiss over her shoulder as she entered the hotel at the lower level. Even in the 8th Street lot, Tom had trouble finding a space. He ended up in the IBM building lot with dozens of other cars. As he locked the doors, he could hear music from the prodigious, well-lit Ambassador, which stood like a fortress in the night. 11:02 p.m., the Embassy Room, the Ambassador Hotel, Los Angeles, California. Tom finally approached the front entrance and adjusted his Kennedy pin on his white Irish knit sweater. Then, as he entered the Ambassador, he saw the young man who was outside Churchill headquarters. The kid stood next to a striking woman about his age. She seemed, with her flashy eyes and svelte body, to be someone who would not associate with this mundane hitchhiker. Tom shook his head, but was taken by her dress and a pattern of dark circles. I'm so confused, he muttered, rolling his eyes as he moved forward. Victory's trappings were everywhere, starting with the conga line dancers shouting for Bobby. The hundreds of campaign workers were already celebrating with drinks and cheers. Tom had his doubts after Oregon, but since the polls closed at 8, the car radio and TV monitors was strongly hinting at a Kennedy victory. For 15 minutes he circled the room and diagonally trekked through the mass of people, but he could not find Rose, Patch, or Natalie. 11:26 p.m. The Venetian Room, the Ambassador Hotel, Los Angeles, California. Tom paused at the entrance to the Venetian Room when he saw the Mexican kid from the campaign headquarters again, talking to the babe in the dress with the patent circles. She was light-skinned with dark hair and black shoes. Something was odd about her tweaked piggy nose. They spoke with 3 men in front of a lighted alabaster fountain, bubbling into a steady stream. Cooler air circulated all around, mixing with the embassy ballroom music and crowd buzz. Howard K. Smith from ABC News tallied the voting tabulations on the color TV on the wall.
Now, Senator McCarthy has 43%. For the first time, he's fallen behind in percentage points. Senator Kennedy now leads with 44% and a considerably greater raw vote. And the uncommitted slate leaning towards Humphrey has 13%.
Well, with that gain, Howard, I think what we're beginning to get are the sources of the Kennedy strength. As you remember earlier in the evening, one of the analysts for McCarthy said that he was afraid they had not built up enough of a lead upstate so that when Los Angeles began to pour in its big vote, as it's now beginning to come in, that they just couldn't withstand the Kennedy advance, and then they began to talk about a moral victory of coming close. But as you know, there are no moral victories in politics, especially if 174 delegates go to the winner.
Senator Kennedy is going down now to address his supporters, as McCarthy did a short while ago. Senator Kennedy is in a corridor. He's waiting to be taken in to meet his supporters and possibly make a speech to them, and we're waiting for him. That's his Rafer Johnson, the Olympic decathlon winner, is on one side of him there. He's been acting as not a kind of a bodyguard, but a kind of a body holder. When Kennedy leans over the side of his car to shake hands, he's often almost pulled out, so Johnson wraps his arms around Kennedy's waist and holds him in. Here's some other aides of the senator from New York. The big man on the right there is Roosevelt Greer, who also takes turns at holding Senator Kennedy and keeping him from being pulled out of his car by his fans and enthusiasts in the streets. Now he's advancing towards the hall where he will talk to his supporters. Now Senator Kennedy, who, by the way, has just pulled ahead of Senator McCarthy and seems to be gaining a little more in the raw vote count, is proceeding towards the ballroom where he will talk to his campaign workers in California.
Tom took a few steps back toward the embassy room when the hitchhiker he had nearly run over an hour before began harassing a Negro security guard because he wanted to get into the embassy room. He had on the same dark sweater from when he had his thumb in the air, but now he carried posters or campaign literature. His hair was curlier up close. Then he complained to a lady up front how he couldn't get into the embassy room. He asked for a Mrs. Klein for help, but she didn't know him. "What's his problem?" asked Tom as the security guard with the badge stamped mallet looked over at him. "He's got no credentials to get into the main room?" Then he smiled. "I saw you come in from the embassy room. The other guy's a twister." "Thanks." "He said he was a collector of political stuff, but to tell you the truth, he's full of shit. I'm looking for a strawberry blonde, a brunette, and a guy with long brown hair and a full Manchu mustache. I was supposed to meet them in the embassy ballroom." "Hey, good luck. That room is jumping with people. The fire department is happy. Go around the back of the building if you can't find them." "Good idea," said Tom, anxious to find Patch and Natalie as well as Rose. Ahead, Tom stopped as on the monitor, ABC News prepared to interview Bobby on national TV. Howard K. Smith continued to anchor the late-night broadcast.
Well, we want to go to Los Angeles and to talk to Senator Kennedy, who is now in his headquarters, and ABC correspondent Bob Clark is there with him. They're taking their seats now, and here we switch now to the Hotel Ambassador in Los Angeles, and Bob Clark with Senator Robert.
We turn those things off. Well, I'm obviously happy that it's an apparent victory. I won't be happy or satisfied until it's over. But, I'm very pleased with South Dakota, where the vice president had campaigned. He spent a good deal of time. It's his home state. And I'm obviously pleased that we're moving ahead here in the state of California, which has such a large number of delegates for Chicago.
Well, now, what do you think about this discussion we had the other night on ABC? Do you think it changed any votes? Do you think it was a factor in your victory in California, if it turns out to be one?
Yes, I think it was very important.
And
I think it was a turning point in the state of California.
Yep.
I think if I had done badly in that discussion, then I think that I would have had a very, very difficult time in the state.
Senator, I don't want to embarrass you, but a local educational station wanted to rerun the tape of that discussion, and we understand that permission was not given by your campaign headquarters.
No. Well, it's fine with me. So nobody ever asked me, but that's you have my permission right now. That's fine. I don't know who they spoke to, but you have my permission, and I would be happy to have that done.
Well, Senator, where do you go from here?
You mean personally?
Presently. I mean, tomorrow, next week?
Well, we're going to have some meetings tomorrow, and then the next day I go to New York. Thursday or Friday I come to New York, and we have some delegates that I'm supporting there in my own state that I will be working for over the period of the next 10 days. And I will also be going to some other states and to see if I can gain some support across the country.
Tom looked ahead and veered toward the front entrance so he could take Mallard's advice. Once outside in the slightly cooler air, he followed the outside of the embassy ballroom. The coconut grove was further down. He reached a fire escape and scampered up the California-style open staircase and squeezed by a wide-faced Mexican girl in her 20s. "Excuse me," he said to the girl on the stairs as she nodded, making a fan gesture with her hand about the heat inside. Tom was now inside a long, linear room, possibly a pantry connected to the kitchen. So he wandered. But the opening to the embassy room was clogged with people, and he continued along into the pantry. But now he was lost and growing upset. When Senator Kennedy, in a Navy suit with a white handkerchief, emerged from the elevator, Tom was ecstatic that being lost in the hotel allowed him to see the man he had just listened to on national TV. He was taken aback by the continuing presence of the hitchhiker in his dark sweater, his arms filled with a book, campaign literature, and a poster which he asked Bobby to autograph. The hitchhiker left, and Tom meandered down the pantry. Bobby and Ethel moved with the group toward the embassy room. Ahead, Tom caught sight of the cat-eyed lady in the strange dress with the dark circles. Next to her was the Mexican, or a dark curly-haired little man he had seen at campaign headquarters and with 3 men in the Venetian room. They hovered near a coffee urn. The little Mexican guy followed Cat Eyes as if he was stuck to her like the quarter-sized dark circles on her dress. Outside the area, the crowd in the embassy room sounded like a combination of a war rally before a battle and the Beatles at Shea Stadium. Guitars blazed as in the embassy room they sang, "This man is your man, this man is my man, this man is Robert Kennedy." Tom shook his head for foolishly not having gone into the embassy room from the Venetian. He couldn't see Bobby, but he was close enough to hear his words.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want to take can you hear this? Can you hear? You can't hear? Can you hear that? That's great. Can we hear from any of this? Let's see if we can we get something that works?
Can we get the guy? Hey! Hold it.
Just one moment. But we can't hear. Can you hear on any of these? Can you hear on that? Oh, that's nice. Can you hear? I want to first express my high regard to Don Drysdale.
who pitched his sixth straight shutout tonight. And I hope that we have as good fortune in our campaign. Could I express my appreciation to a number of people? First to Jess Unruh for all that he did, first getting me into this. And express my appreciation to him for his friendship and his help during this campaign, and for his continued perseverance and his effort, and for all of those who have been associated with him. I'll always be very grateful. And if I could also express my appreciation to a number of other people, if you just bear with me for a moment, I'd like to express my appreciation to Steve Smith, who was ruthless, but has been effective. And I just want to say how grateful I am to him, to his wife, my sister Jean, to my sister Pat, and to my mother, and to all of those other Kennedys who came and helped me. I want to express my gratitude to my dog Freckles, who's been maligned. And I don't care what they... As Franklin Roosevelt said, I don't care what they say about me, but when they start to attack my dog. I'm not doing this in the order of importance, but I also want to thank my wife, Ethel.
That young lady.
And her patience during this whole effort is fantastic. Thank you very much. Freckles has gone home to bed. He thought very early that we were going to win, so he retired. I also want to point out Tom Reese, who is here, who was an early supporter. And I want to thank a number of other people, if I may, all of those of you who worked so hard in this campaign, all of the students who worked across this state, the members of my delegation, or our delegation, who also worked so diligently and with such unselfishness across the state on my behalf and on behalf of this cause that we're involved in. I want to thank Cesar Chavez, who was here a little earlier. And Bert Corona, who also worked with him, and all of those Mexican Americans who were such supporters of mine. And Dolores Huerta, who is an old friend of mine and has worked with the union, to thank her and tell her how much I appreciate her coming tonight. We have certain obligations and responsibilities to our fellow citizens, which we've talked about during the course of this campaign, and I want to make it clear that if I'm elected President of the United States with your help, I intend to keep them. I want to also thank all my friends in the black community who made this campaign. Voting today, I think, really made a major difference for me. I want to express my appreciation to them. To my friend, if I may, Johnson, who's here. And to Rosie Greer, who said that he'd take care of anybody who didn't vote for me. In a kind way, because that's what we are in our country. Smile. Yes. And I want to also, if I may, just take a moment more of your time to express my appreciation to Paul Schrade, who, from the UAW, who worked so hard, and all the other members of the labor organizations and members of the labor unions. And I'm very grateful to him and for what he's done and the effort that he's made on behalf of the working man here in the state of California. I'm very, very appreciative. I'm very grateful for the vote that I received and for all that all of you worked on behalf of in the agricultural areas of the state as well as in the cities. I think it indicates quite clearly, as well as in the suburbs, I think it indicates quite clearly what we can do here in the United States. The vote here in the state of California, the vote in the state of South Dakota. Here is the most urban state of any of the states of our union. South Dakota, the most rural state of any of the states of our union. We're able to win them both. I think that we can end the divisions within the United States. What I think is quite clear is that we can work together in the last analysis, and that what has been going on within the United States over the period of the last 3 years, the divisions, the violence, the disenchantment with our society, the divisions, whether it's between blacks and whites, between the poor and the more affluent, or between age groups, or on the war in Vietnam, that we can start to work together. We are a great country, and a selfish country, and a compassionate country. And I intend to make that my basis for running and over the period of the next few months. Ladies and gentlemen, if I can just take a moment more of your time, because everybody must be dying from the heat. But what I think all of these primaries have indicated, if I can just take a minute or 2 minutes more of your time. What all of these primaries have indicated, and all of the party caucuses have indicated, whether they occurred in Colorado or Idaho or Iowa, wherever they occurred, it was the people in the Democratic Party and the people in the United States want to change. And that change can come about only if those who are delegates in Chicago recognize the importance of what has happened here in the state of California, what has happened in South Dakota, what happened in New Hampshire, what happened across the rest of this country. The country wants to move in a different direction. We want to deal with our own problems within our own country, and we want peace in Vietnam. I congratulate Senator McCarthy and those who have been associated with him in their efforts that they have started in New Hampshire and carried through to the primary here in the state of California. The fact is that all of us are involved in this great effort, and it's a great effort not on behalf of the Democratic Party. It's a great effort on behalf of the United States, on behalf of our own people, on behalf of mankind all around the globe and the next generation. I would hope now that the California primary is finished, now that these primaries are over, that we could now concentrate on having a dialogue or a debate, I hope, between the Vice President and perhaps myself on what direction we want to go in the United States. What we're going to do in the rural areas of our country, what we're going to do for those who still suffer within the United States from hunger, what we're going to do around the rest of the globe, and whether we're going to continue the policies that have been so unsuccessful in Vietnam of American troops and American Marines carrying the major burden of that conflict. I do not want to, and I think we should move in a different direction. So I thank all of you who made this possible this evening, all of the effort that you made, and all of the people whose names I haven't mentioned, but who did all of the work at the precinct level, who got out the vote, who did all of the effort, brought forth all of the effort that's required. I was a campaign manager 8 years ago. I know what a difference that kind of an effort and that kind of commitment makes. So I thank all of you, those of you who are here. Mayor Yorty has just sent me a message that we've been here too long already. So, my thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there. Thank you very much.
The crowd erupted when he was finished. We want Bobby, we want Bobby. As Cat Eyes led the Mexican guy in the blue coat away from a coffee urn, a large German-looking man took Bobby's arm and guided the senator only a few feet in front of Tom. Ethel was not too far behind. He heard Bobby say to one of his men, "Paul, I want you and Jess with me." Tom felt the warmth of Bobby's hand as Bobby shook his hand and then turned toward one of the kitchen workers. Bobby was less than 10 feet away from the entrance ahead. Why was the hitchhiker back here in an aisle 15 feet from Cat Eyes and the Mexican? The Mexican stood between the ice machine and the other end of the pantry. Cat Eyes sat up on a table. Look! The sexy Cat Eyes squeezed the Mexican's elbow, causing the Mexican to leap from a tray stack. "Kennedy, you son of a bitch!" yelled the Mexican as he waved a handgun and started firing crazily. Somebody yelled, "He's been hit!" The little guy with the gun was no closer than 3 feet from Bobby. Bobby, being held on the right by a gray uniformed security guard, fell to the floor, grasping the guard's tie, and in a gray blur the uniformed man fell with him. Then he fired his gun 3 times. The clip-on tie lay on the floor. "Is everybody okay?" Bobby managed to ask as the busboy bent over him. The hitchhiker had something dark in his hand as he barreled into a lady ahead, injuring her mouth as he rumbled by her. A whole group of men pushed the Mexican onto the table as football player 290-pound Rosie Greer, author George Plimpton, and others tried to extricate the gun from the young man's hand. Word spread out front, and people were screaming. In less than 15 seconds, Tom was sure he heard at least 15 shots.
Senator Kennedy has been shot. Is that possible? Is that possible? Is it possible, ladies and gentlemen? It is possible. He has not only Senator Kennedy, oh my God. Senator Kennedy has been shot. And another man, a Kennedy campaign manager, and possibly shot in the head. I am right here. Rayford Johnson has a hold of a man who apparently has fired the shot. That's it, Rayford. Get it. Get the gun, Rayford. Okay, now hold on to the guy. Hold on to him. Hold on to him, ladies and gentlemen. Hold him. Hold him. We don't want another Oswald. Hold him, Rayford. We don't want another Oswald. Hold him, Rayford. Keep people away from him. Keep people away from him.
Blood leaked all over the pantry floor. Cat Eyes and the grungy man in the gold sweater and white shirt exited the pantry with an increasing fervor toward the fire escape. Tom sprinted out the east pantry entrance after the hitchhiker into the colonial room. The hitchhiker pushed like a panicky madman through the crowd. With Tom stuck in the agitated crowd, a photographer and another man, joined by the security guard Mallard, pushed the hitchhiker toward the Lautrec Room restaurant below the Colonial Room and adjacent to the Gold Room. People were yelling, "Stop that man!" The hitchhiker careened into a prodigious mirror as the photographer and other man slammed the hitchhiker to the ground. Mallard subdued and handcuffed the hitchhiker. A card fell onto the floor and another security officer called out, "Who is Keith Dwayne Gilbert?" The hitchhiker shook his head. Tom stepped back into the embassy room where someone was on the microphone.
Would a doctor come right here?
A doctor! We need a doctor right here at the microphone, please, immediately.
At the end of our cable. Is there a doctor?
Everybody, please stay back. Please stay back. We need a doctor here.
Is there a doctor in the house, please? It's very important. We need a doctor. Is there a doctor?
Quiet! Quiet, please. Quiet, please. The best thing everybody can do here is in an orderly way leave. Would you please do that? Just in an orderly way, clear the room. Can we do that, please? Quiet, please. Best thing and the most helpful thing you'll that everyone can do here is to leave the room in an orderly way. Now, will you please do that for us? Will you please do that? Will you move out quietly, please? We don't know what's happened, but all of this noise and confusion is not going to help. So will you please clear the room? Will you please clear the room in an orderly fashion? Thank you.
Yes. I'm with you.
Would everyone please clear the room, otherwise nothing can be done.
Stay with me. Stay right here.
Yeah, I'm trying to get more people. Can't do anything. You can help to clear the room. There's an exit on this side of the room. Would you please leave the room? Fashion and leave the room.
Would you please leave the room?
I'll go get another set of
I'm all right here. You just stay with me. Please.
12:23 a.m. Entrance to the embassy ballroom. The news report on the TV at the edge of the embassy ballroom had a surreal effect with Bobby somewhere behind the stage, just a few hundred feet in front of Tom. And Howard K. Smith came back on the air on one of the TVs in the ballroom.
We've kept the air on because we've heard an alarming report that Robert Kennedy was shot in that ballroom at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. A very loud noise like a clap of thunder was heard, a small explosion. We waited to see what it was, and then came a report that Senator Robert Kennedy was shot. We will bring you more news as we learn it. So far, that's all the information we have. As Senator Kennedy had claimed victory in California and was leaving the podium, this loud noise was heard. Our reporter got in touch with us and told us that Robert Kennedy had been fired upon. We don't know how dangerous it is, whether it's serious. And just one of our assistant directors was one of those who was shot. Billy Weisel, an ABC assistant director, working on this program in the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, was shot in the hand. We will bring you more details as we know them.
What is the immediate...
We're going to stay on the air
What is the
meanwhile
immediate
until we
need
have
there
more
now?
news.
More
We don't want to alarm you. We hope not to bring any false information as has happened
How many are
before.
back there now?
But in the confusion in the ballroom, these were the reports we
Just
had.
in this room?
We
Just
held off
beyond?
reporting them as long as we could, but then
Ladies
we
and
felt we
gentlemen,
had to
if
go
you will
ahead and
please
report them
clear the
because we heard a
auditorium,
confirmation
certainly
from a
appreciate it.
second reporter.
There's absolutely
The
nothing
news
that you
is
can
that
do
a
at
very
this point
loud
except
noise
clear the
was
room
heard
and give
as
us
Robert
someplace to
Kennedy
work,
was
please.
leaving the podium in the Ambassador Hotel ballroom after having claimed
Very little
victory and
information
congratulated his
available.
supporters.
Those people who
A
were
noise like a small explosion or a
back in
gun
this
going
area
off was
are
heard.
still in there.
An ABC
Most of them
assistant
not
director. Here we are now. This is the
out.
ballroom in the
Information is
Ambassador
very
Hotel in Los Angeles, California.
Leave the room.
This gentleman has just looked back in there where this apparently occurred. What does it appear now?
This is the ballroom in the Ambassador Hotel.
It's good. Most of the people are out of here now. If we could
They're
get,
trying to clear the
a few more
hall.
people out of here would do a lot more good.
We're still not clear on what
There was quite a
happened,
bit of confusion at first,
but a report that a shot was fired reached us. We hesitated to report it, not wanting to cause alarm or to pass along a false rumor. Then we got the report from a second reporter, and we proceeded to tell you about it on this program.
One of the wounded has been brought out now. It appears to be
We're going
a
to get more
woman,
information at any moment.
a lady who was standing, who was lying, being roped off now to push the few spectators who remain and newsmen back.
Ambassador Hotel, 3400 Wilshire Boulevard, Los Angeles, California. Patch had seen Baker Finch in the ballroom 15 minutes before Bobby was shot. With Rose and Natalie back near the television cameras, Patch darted quickly around the edge of the ballroom. Finch had moved out of the Venetian room with another man, shorter, with blonde hair. Patch had lost track of the CIA operative at a huge glowing water fountain when he returned to the ballroom. He had decided to call Denali, but once they shot Bobby, he knew he had to leave the hotel immediately. But they had not seen Tom, and Rose was frantic. The entire crowded room burst into a frenzy of confusion. It was only when they moved Bobby's body on a gurney that Patch caught sight of Tom on the floor across from the embassy ballroom. Tom had slipped down the wall and broken down with his face in his hands. To be ripped from victory, to descend into this utter horror, was almost too much to take. Patch twisted and turned through the crowd and hoisted Tom to his feet, and Rose locked her arms around him. Everybody, outside! Walk slowly and hold on to each other. He leaned toward Tom. Tom, where's the car? I saw the whole thing. Where is the goddamn car? IBM building, Tom said, still crying. Patch nodded as he continuously checked the crowd for Finch. He held on to Natalie as they neared the front entrance. Cops were gathering. They might just be able to get on to Wilshire. They'll get him help, said Patch, more for the benefit of the cops who were in disarray.
That's correct.
Can you tell me whether he appeared to be conscious or not?
No.
It was not until they were on Wilshire Boulevard that Patch understood the ramifications of the shooting. Anger, specifically directed at Finch, surged through his body. Tom led them to the car. Give me the keys, said Patch. Tom dug out the keys out of his chinos. Everybody, in the car. Patch was not that familiar with Los Angeles, but he figured if he got on one of the major roads, he would reach a freeway. He slowly backed up and went forward multiple times to get away from the parked cars. Even though he went slowly to the street, he nicked the curb. So many scenarios were ricocheting inside his head. The ambassador, the lights, and the confusion faded into the dark. Before calling Phinney, Patch would need Tom's information. With just the sound of the engine, Patch moved a little bit faster until he saw a sign for the 405 freeway. Tom, take it slow. Everybody listen. Tom began the narrative when he first saw the hitchhiker at the campaign headquarters. The two important points he first garnered involved the Mexican kid and just what the hitchhiker was up to. What was the Cat Eyes woman doing with the Mexican kid earlier and then right before the shooting? Are you sure the security guard fired his gun? Shouted Patch as he moved onto the freeway. As Bobby was collapsing, he was right behind him. He was right behind Bobby. Are you kidding me? It's a damn setup is what it is. Some other guy in a gold sweater and sandy hair, cried Tom, hyperventilating. And the damn woman with the cat eyes and that dress with the dark circles. She and the guy in the sweater, they bolted out of the pantry. What else? The hitchhiker ran into the colonial room. They nailed him earlier for trying to get in the big room. I ran after him, but he was tackled. They cuffed him and he must be under arrest, Patch, he said for the first time, calling him by his name. Well, who the hell was the girl? Tom shook his head. It was like she was in charge of that kid. She led him into this. Okay. I'm going to find a phone in a few minutes. Put on the radio, Natalie. Listen to every detail of what they're saying and compare to Tom what you saw.
We interrupt our interview to bring you a bulletin from Associated Press. The doctor on the hospital staff at Central Receiving Hospital, where Kennedy was first taken, told UPI that Kennedy was shot twice in the head and once in the shoulder. Associated Press said that the last rites were administered to Senator Kennedy, to the senator 9 minutes ago.
Rose and Natalie gasped as Tom put his head in his hands again. Patch felt himself choking up. All the crowds in the campaign kept flashing into his head. Why now? Why now?
Here is an Associated Press bulletin. Senator Robert Kennedy, shot during an election night victory appearance today, was given the last rites of the Catholic Church at 1 a.m.
Patch signaled for the 10 freeway in West Los Angeles. I'm heading to Riverside, Natalie. Why? Asked Tom. I know people out there, said Patch. First, let me call them. 10 minutes later, Patch was at a payphone at a 76 station. He connected to Phinney right away. Phinney was riled up more than Patch had ever known. He shouted into the phone.
Did Finch do this?
Patch pounded the plexiglass. That's not the information I have, Phinney. I didn't see Finch until 15 minutes before Bobby was shot. The room was packed and I tried to follow him.
Denali says that Bobby is done. He's not going to make it. He's devastated. He knows Bobby personally.
They ambushed him in the pantry, said Patch. Tom Cortlandt saw the whole thing.
I want his statement, but first things first. Get out to Ramsey. Kawaii will get you the hell out of here.
What about Tom and Rose?
All of you, listen carefully. The intel was monitored from an LAPD channel. I'll give you the time and the suspect. We'll check it against what you know. Give this info to Gaulle.
Patch had an envelope and a Kennedy pen. Go.
Male Latin, 25 to 26, 5'5", bushy hair, dark eyes, light build, wearing a blue jacket and blue Levi's, blue tennis shoes.
Tom called him the Mexican.
12:50 a.m. not long ago. Chiraga, 6'4", suspect in custody.
Who the hell is he?
Unknown. Patch, get immediately over to Ramsey. Gaulle has been alerted. We'll talk to you on the plane.
Okay. Patch placed the receiver back on the hook. Who are you, Patch? Asked Tom. Then he snapped at Patch and pointed. Were you in on this? We were trying to protect Senator Kennedy, said Natalie. The world isn't what it seems to be, Tom. Tom removed a handgun from the sports bag on the floor. You heard, Natalie. I was trying to save his life. Well, you did a very piss-poor job of that, cried Tom, waving the gun. Give me the gun, Tom. You and Natalie, get out of the fucking car. You're in huge trouble, Tom. You have to be on film or the network feeds. They'll be looking for you. They're evil. They'll kill you both. I am giving you 10 seconds, Patch. I have no compunction about killing someone who was in a plot against Bobby. Damn, said Patch as he and Natalie moved onto the sidewalk. Rose closed the door. Patch, you have to stop them. They have the gun, Natalie. Tom skidded and the tires left rubber as the convertible spun 180 degrees. He backtracked toward the freeway and ran the red light before rising up the freeway ramp. Phinney!
Patch, why are you...
Tom and Rose just left us here under gunpoint.
Where are they now?
They're heading east on the 10 freeway. We're on North Azusa Ave in Covina, California at a 76 station.
Stay near that gas station, Patch, but in the shadows. We'll get somebody out there as soon as possible.
Patch guided Natalie away from the pumps and down the side road with residential houses. He curled up next to a power line's chain link fence where they could see the gas station. Tom was inside that pantry. He's screwed. She cried into his shoulder. Bobby's clinging to life. I just can't take any more, Patch. I can't. Chapter 37. Over the Atlantic Ocean, June 5th, 1968. As dawn broke over the Atlantic Ocean on the way to Paris, Denali himself contacted them via a radio link on the plane. The signal was weak and scratchy. Patch was equally upset about Tom and Rose as he was about Bobby in critical condition and not expected to live.
I don't want you thinking you could have done things better. Baker Finch is a genius. They've set us up for Sirhan to take the fall. I'm not quite sure how they did it.
Patch ached in his gut as he thought of Bobby Kennedy being taken out of the hotel on a gurney. Who is Sirhan?
Young American Palestinian.
The one Tom called the Mexican, said Patch.
Correct. Sirhan may have been firing blanks. That's just a hypothesis.
Brian.
Very possible. People I talked to tell me that the woman in the polka dot dress was his handler. She set him in motion. Sirhan was just a diversion. We have a bulletin, and here it is.
Go ahead.
From 12:30 p.m. last night, June 5th, IRAM 6568 APV emergency. Assault with intent to commit murder in custody. Suspect Sirhan Bashara Sirhan, a.k.a. Sirhan Sharif Bashara, prior to shooting subject observed with female Caucasian 23 to 27, 5'6", wearing a white polka dot dress, 3 3/4-inch sleeves with small polka dots, dark shoes, bouffant hair. This female not identified or in custody. Any information on suspect is described as female Caucasian.
I think I saw this woman on TV in Pomona. And maybe out at the ranch.
Sergeant Paul Chiraga Patch reported on an older couple, the Bernsteins, unhinged in the Ambassador parking lot about a young woman wearing a polka dot dress and a young man laughing and shouting, "We shot him, we shot him."
Patch lowered his head. I'm sick of this. I pray for my country. I pray for Bobby Kennedy. How can we stop these people? Tell me, how?
Find that report. Girard is dead. That doesn't mean Bellini's dead.
Give us time to grieve, please. The politician cared about people. Now it's over.
Patch, this is a recording that's been pulled from NBC. A woman named Serrano may have seen the two people who were in on the shooting. I want Natalie to hear this also,
said Denali. I'm here, Denali. Denali began playing the audio of an NBC report on the radio. A young campaign worker, Sandy Serrano, spoke on national television about what she saw on a fire escape outside the pantry.
She was Caucasian. She had on a white dress with polka dots. She was light-skinned, dark hair. She had black shoes on, and she has a funny nose. And after that, a boy came down with her. He was about 23 years old, and he was Mexican-American, because I can remember that because I'm Mexican-American.
And then he saw her at the fountain in the Venetian room in the pantry.
There are dozens of witnesses who saw the same thing, but the police are not pursuing this lead,
said Denali. Why not? Asked Patch, growing more agitated.
They must be in on this,
said Phinney. God damn it, screamed Patch. This man would have become president, and now it's all turned around.
Patch,
yelled Phinney.
It's beyond your control.
No. How do we get to these people?
You get to France, work with our people. That de Gaulle JFK report has to be in Paris. That's where Girard was murdered.
Can't deal with all that now.
I understand.
Is there any way that Bobby can survive this? Asked Patch.
No, Patch. They're not going to directly say that, but the damage from that rear shot was devastating. Our information is it was a hollow point bullet.
But Tom said Sirhan was in front of Bobby, said Natalie. And the security guard fired his gun. A complete ambush, yelled Patch as he broke down again, and Natalie, crying softly, held him. Denali's voice was lower as he spoke over the radio frequency.
We're dealing with higher powers, powers that run the world. Right now, let's just pray for Bobby and the Good Samaritan. Pray that somehow he lives.
Patch had written in a notebook all night so he'd get the correct details of the attack on RFK. He had recovered and formed an implacable resolve. It was early afternoon in France at the same airfield he had left for Algeria with Meinkewitz last year. Outside, a military truck slowed on the tarmac. Patch leaned against the portal. Soldiers? Asked Natalie. Whose soldiers? We're out of danger now, said Patch. This is just awful. Patch nodded and kept grinding his teeth. He spoke in a low, guttural, almost animalistic voice. I want them all killed, Natalie. Especially Finch. I want him myself. He grabbed his notebook and steered her toward the hatchway. A maroon Mercedes zoomed across the airfield and pulled between the plane and the truck. Two men in suits emerged from the back seat and motioned for Patch and Natalie to get inside. Andre sat in the passenger seat. Andre. Patch, not a good day. I spoke with the Gaulle's people this morning. The Gaulle is extremely unnerved about the attack on Senator Kennedy. He's not going to make it, Andre. Again, I'm sorry to all the citizens of the United States of America and the world. Kennedy was a brave man to take them on. The C-130, gray in the sunlight, was already moving away from them. You're part of the network, Andre. Sometimes, he said, turning to the back seat. It is better not to reveal one's true identity. Patch spoke with his eyes closed. How did an experienced agent, a legendary agent such as Girard, get in a position to be murdered? How do you think? What were his weaknesses, Patch? Wine, woman, and money, said Natalie. Correct, Natalie. With wine you can sober up. With money you can cut back on your expenses. But with a woman, a man can be taken in many directions. Which is in itself not lethal. A woman can do what wine and money cannot. A woman can infect a man's soul. In many ways, said Patch, now staring out the window as they left the airfield. Soon they were moving at high speed along a narrow straight road through the woods. Doesn't matter, Gerard is dead. Died on May 15th. Maybe the report is in the hands of this man named Bellini. Do you know something I do not, Patch? If Bellini is here in Paris, it is because a woman, a Soviet, somehow got that bit of information from Gerard. We have monitored her report after she poisoned him with bottled water. How simple, how unexotic. You must have checked all the intelligence files for Bellini, said Natalie. I'm afraid we came up short. We have checked inmates, assassins, nothing government officials. What was the name of the Soviet woman? Why? I need to know who I'm dealing with. It motivates me, said Patch, but he was thinking of Finch in the embassy room at the ambassador. Isolde Volkov, he said, handing Patch a studio portrait of a thin blonde with cunning eyes and a sleek torso. How long was she here, and how did he contact her? Asked Patch, studying the photo. She was in Paris for a week, 3 days of which Gerard was here before he died. How would that help us find Bellini? Patch continued to look out the window, campaign rallies mixed with his thoughts about Tom and Rose disappearing into the night. I'm sorry. Perhaps they met with Bellini, Andre. I suppose it is possible. Or more than that. Was she looking for the information in Bellini, or was she just in Paris to kill Gerard? Both, said Andre. The Russians would love to possess the knowledge of the Kennedy assassination. It would allow them great leverage. She wouldn't kill him without the information, if that's what she was after, said Natalie. Isolde Volkov, maybe the one on the Bellini phone call, said Patch. Gerard may have sold that report to the Russians for $20 million. Speculation, said Andre. Maybe. I want to know what Volkov and Gerard did for 3 days, said Patch. Negotiate? Asked Patch. Patch shrugged his shoulders. If we know where they dined or where he bedded her down, he was known for that. We will get whatever we have to you, Patch. You'll have to dig for the rest. Andre, please get me updates on Senator Kennedy's condition, said Patch. Of course. Andre blessed himself. Appartement Meridian, June 6, 1968, 9:44 a.m. Patch knew because of the melancholia across Frank Mienkewitz's face that the death announcement was imminent. He held Natalie's hand. Andre had just left, leaving 2 men outside the door and a promise that they would be out of Paris in 2 hours to a safer location. Bobby's press secretary stepped up to the microphone.
Senator Robert Francis Kennedy died at 1:44 a.m. today, June 6, 1968. With Senator Kennedy, at the time of his death, were his wife Ethel, his sisters Mrs. Stephen Smith, Mrs. Patricia Lawford, brother-in-law Mr. Stephen Smith, his sister-in-law Mrs. John F. Kennedy. He was 42 years old.
Only a pause of a few seconds separated Frank Mienkewitz's words and Natalie's quoting Aeschylus from memory. A man dies, not for the many wounds that pierce his breast, unless it be life's end keep pace with death, nor sitting on his hearth at home doth he more the escape his appointed doom. She and Patch hugged and softly whimpered, holding each other on the divan as night fell. Nothing was said for hours. Vietnam War would continue to send America's youth into the meat grinder, and the dream of Bobby Kennedy becoming President of the United States was over. June 23rd, 1968. Sirhan is Rocco. For some reason he was near the Mendesa Ranch for over a year that I know of. You saw him. We were so close to him. It has to be the hypnosis. And Bryant, because we now know Palakas was stationed alongside the varnished wood enclosure at the Colonial Room entrance. We have a photo. Where's Palakas now? Unknown. Damn it. There's no way you could have known, Patch. I know, but it's just too late. Patch and Natalie were brought outside of Paris, about a half an hour's drive. A third-floor apartment had been appropriated for them as well as an account at the local market. It was from this apartment they watched on television Bobby's funeral mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral.
That is the way he lived. That is what he leaves us. My brother need not be idealized or enlarged in death beyond what he was in life. To be remembered simply as a good and decent man who saw wrong and tried to right it, saw suffering and tried to heal it, saw war and tried to stop it. Those of us who loved him and who take him to his rest today pray that what he was to us and what he wished for others will someday come to pass for all the world. As he said many times in many parts of this nation, to those he touched and who sought to touch him. Some men see things as they are and say why. I dream things that never were and say why not.
The train left for Washington, D.C. with thousands lining the tracks to the nation's capital. Bobby was buried in Arlington National Cemetery within yards of President Kennedy. Neither Patch or Natalie said much or even commented on the horrific loss and the immense injustice of the assassination of Senator Robert F. Kennedy. They walked through the town and sat near the river in silence, and sometimes they'd walk by the chateau or sit on the benches in the surrounding park. Patch's inner thoughts and anger were at full throttle. Why would Gerard be taken in by this woman and risk the report being stolen, unless Volkov was paying the $20 million via the Russians? Did she already meet with Bellini, and did the Russians possess the Gaulle report? And did Alexander Moon fit into this? Moon and Meinkewitz were diligently involved in this experimental work at the College of Sciences in the village of Dazurich, Switzerland. Rumors abounded with Phinney that they might take some time off and travel to France. Andre's Mercedes crunched the stones along the curb. The French inspector walked from the car alone. Patch, Isolde Volkov was run down by an unidentified truck this morning in front of the Père Lachaise cemetery. Apparently she had returned to Paris. The Russian embassy officials claimed the body. The investigation is ongoing. Patch looked up quickly. Why was she back in Paris? She may have let a few weeks pass before she met Bellini, said Andre, just to cover herself. Patch stood. Obviously somebody was watching her, and they wanted her dead, maybe even Bellini. Andre crunched his brow. I am sure Sir Attic gave instructions to an operative that should he die, was she carrying anything or have anything on her person? We are looking into it. We know where she stayed and where she ate her last meal, and this morning, and Patch's face tightened with an advancing anger he couldn't control. Meinkewitz and Moon have made progress, is the word I have. What progress? Asked Patch. I don't have that answer. Patch nodded. That's encouraging. Patch looked at Natalie and then back at Andre. The goal is to locate Bellini, Andre. How do we do that? Do what we are doing. See who met with Volkov. Perhaps she was making a deal with Bellini to get the report. What about Baker Finch? I'm sure he's left Los Angeles now that his operation is over. Last seen heading to Washington, D.C. He may have been at Senator Kennedy's burial at Arlington. Bastard. Chapter 38. June 24th, 1968. Andre adjusted the louvers on the window blinds, then he sat down. A small, portable tape recorder played back an interrogation of the young woman who was on the fire escape when the woman in the polka dot dress and a Mexican man descended the fire escape, proclaiming that they had shot Bobby.
You see what happens? There's two ways to approach this thing. The first one is for me to appeal to you as a decent woman that campaigns for Senator Kennedy. This is the one way I can approach. The other way is for me to fold up the paper, go out here and tell these people, haven't stopped where they're going to come upstairs. And this is the wrong way because, look, I have to look at myself. When I shave in the morning, I look at myself. And right now I have my deepest compassion for you because you're a young lady. And I want to try to do whatever I believe is best for you. What's best for you?
Well, there was this girl coming. She was coming downstairs and she said, we shot. No, this girl in the polka dot dress, a white dress, polka. And
it's like a disease. I know what I'm telling you.
It said I never even seen a girl with a polka dot dress.
I'm saying that nobody told you we had shot Kennedy.
If somebody told me that we had shot
No.
I'm sorry, but that's true. That is true.
Look, one of these days you're going to be 27 years old, 28 years old. What kind of a person?
It's a whole mess of things.
What's that from the beginning?
It's too messed up. Even I can't even remember what happened anymore.
But number one, you know that nobody told you we had shot Kennedy.
No, somebody told me we had shot Kennedy.
No, nobody told you. Where did they tell you this, honey?
Outside.
No, ma'am.
The polygraph operator Hernandez and the LAPD berated and intimidated Serrano for over a half an hour so far. How did you get this? Asked Patch. Through intel channels. Everyone knows what the hell went on in the pantry, goddammit. How can they say that Sirhan did it and did it alone when they have this fascist taking this girl's story apart? Asked Natalie. Hernandez is proving your point, Natalie, said Andre. You're right, said Patch. It's obvious the girl in the polka dot dress played the key role along with the guy who was running down the stairs with her. Andre shook his head. She disappeared into the night. This girl will never be found, and known only to certain people if she survives at all. I think she was in charge of Sirhan. Tom said he led Sirhan, he called him the Mexican, around. Sure, to get him to fire the gun, said Andre. There has to be hypnosis involved. A frame-up while the guard behind Kennedy fires the shots. I understand the guard's gun has not been tested. They will, of course, get the results they want. Unless, like this report, said Patch, unless they are forced, Inspector, unless they are forced. If we could have been in 10 places at once, we might have stopped these people, said Patch as they moved toward the cafe up ahead. The movers do what they do and the rest of us are to mind our own business, said Natalie. I worry about Finch. Sooner or later he's going to know where we are. For his sake, he'd better not. Because I will personally watch him die slowly. You and me both. As the traffic blended into the table conversation, they had a hefty lunch. Mixed salad, beef, potatoes, rice, green beans, and a cheese course. Before dessert, Patch spoke with the waiter, Paul, about Bellini and showed him the photo of the blonde-haired Volkov. Paul brought the photo and back and returned a few minutes later, but had no success with any of the staff identifying the woman. Then he served a sweet crepe and coffee. This could take forever. And just what do we do with Mr. Bellini when we find him, Patch? See if he has a report. She asked with a slight grin, the first smile since the ambassador. If Bellini was Gerard's backup, he's no slouch. I understand. Patch looked down the boulevard and at the shoppers along the sidewalk. We have to go street by street with this picture. Roll of the dice. Natalie changed the narrative on the 27th of June. It was late in the afternoon and Patch wanted to take a break and walk the river for half a mile before Natalie stopped him. The Russian was cognizant of her appearance. Be assured she was highly confident, said Patch. Natalie pushed her index finger into her side. That bouffant hairdo. What? He asked as they prepared to cross the street. We're going about this all wrong. How so? That hairdo required maintenance. She may have gotten a tune-up to appear at her best for Gerard. I'm having trouble thinking that Gerard would be so callous as to allow himself to be taken in by some Russian, whatever she is. Let's check the salons. Patch raised his brow. Worth a try, Patch Kincaid. On the next day, around 3 in the afternoon, a young hairdresser recognized the photo. Miss Isolde had been the lady, name unknown, around 10 days ago. Her friend Michelle, who was not working until tomorrow afternoon, tweaked the blonde's hair. She remembered Michelle's huge tip. Around lunchtime, a cream-colored Porsche pulled up in front of the shop. 10 minutes later, she was inside his car and they sped off. Who drove the Porsche? Well, I don't know. He never got out of the car. Patch wrote down the other hairdresser's name and said they'd be back. On the sidewalk, Patch leaned toward Natalie. Was it Gerard, and where did he bring her? Natalie and Patch together read a Washington Post article about the Noguchi autopsy of Senator Kennedy. RFK's brain damage was past repair by Thomas O'Toole, Washington Post staff writer, Los Angeles. An autopsy of Senator Robert F. Kennedy's body today revealed that his brain was damaged beyond repair by a single shot from his assassin's .22 caliber pistol. The injury was so severe, said Los Angeles County Coroner Thomas T. Noguchi, that survival was impossible. Dr. Noguchi drew that conclusion after he and 2 deputies, medical examiners, and 3 pathologists from the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology in Washington performed a 6-hour autopsy on Senator Kennedy that did not end until 12:15 p.m. The autopsy took place at the Good Samaritan Hospital, where Senator Kennedy died at 4:44 this morning without once coming out of a deep coma. It was a miracle that Senator Kennedy lived as long as he did, doctors implied, and a tragic stroke of bad luck that he was shot the way he was. Point-blank range. If the assassin's small-caliber revolver had not been fired at point-blank range and the bullet had not struck Kennedy behind the right ear, where the mastoid bone lies, the New York senator might still be alive, doctors said. But the .22 caliber bullet hit the mastoid with such close-up force that it scattered pieces of both bone and bullet deeply and widely into the brain. The bullet also struck the top part of the petrous stony bone that is just behind the mastoid and is known as the hardest bone in the body. Broken pieces of this bone then penetrated the brain as secondary missiles, doctors said. It might have caused almost as much damage as the bullet itself. The bullet was perfectly placed by the guard and exploded. Perfectly executed, said Patch. These people are psychological experts. The entourage went after the aggressor. Sirhan is the guard fired. No one will question the guard, and the cops have their man. No one is looking into this. You're right. It's all about Sirhan. Sir, said one of the waiters. Yes, said Patch, looking up. You have a call. Thank you. He looked into Natalie's eyes. I wish I could just disappear. Patch followed the waiter to a small area behind the bar and then nodded. Then he answered the phone. Yeah. Denali's voice was clear on the line.
Palikas is dead.
Patch stopped as an empty feeling encompassed his body. How?
He was in New York, Niagara Falls, waiting for Bobby. Killed in a chase by New York State troopers who had him on a nationwide list. But that's not the worst.
Patch closed his eyes. What is it?
Finch is on his way to Paris.
Why? Asked Patch, even though he knew the answer.
They wanted the Gaulle report. And you can assume they have people on the ground tracking down what you're pursuing. That report is the one obstacle that could expose them all. Thus the high priority. We suggest for now that we get you 2 out of there.
We're not leaving, said Patch.
Patch, I just attended the funeral of my friend and a man I greatly admired. I feel the same way about you and Natalie. I don't want to attend second funerals. I need time away and we'll mix time off with politics. I'm heading up north for a short time. We'll be back in 10 days. Take some time off. Go to some place you love. Godspeed.
He returned to the table. His face reddened as he clenched his fists. Denali wants us to leave. Finch is on his way to France. I'm not leaving till we get that report, said Natalie. The hell with Denali. If he had pushed more for security, Bobby would be alive and in New York right now. And John Palakis is dead, waiting in the lurch at Niagara Falls for Bobby. Just shows they would have got him no matter what after he won the California primary. Let's get out of here. Patch paid the bill and then they snuck out the back of the cafe. We need to be staying somewhere else. Back in Paris, in some dump where Finch can't find us. Then what? Back to the hairdresser who will be working tomorrow. We need to know everything Volkov said to her 10 days ago. Everything. Their shoes pounded against the wooden steps up to the second floor, shaking the staircase. Patch inserted the key and they burst into the furnished apartment. Ray Meinkewitz, in a denim jacket and jeans, smoked a cigar at the window table. Ray! Ray, what the hell are you doing here? Asked Patch, shaking his head as he embraced his old friend. We had to leave Switzerland before the Russians kill us. Us? Asked Patch. That's right, Patch, said Dr. Moon, dressed in a sweater and jeans, and he drank coffee from a clear mug as he emerged from the kitchen. You come here to kill us, Moon? I may be crazy, Patch, but I'm on your side. I admired Bobby and Jack Kennedy, too. Well, you'll excuse me if I don't completely trust you, said Patch. Perfectly understandable. We've made great progress in our work. Meinkewitz nodded. We've isolated the retrograde bubbles and we know how to move them. Patch turned to Natalie. Ray, you know Natalie, and Natalie, this is Dr. Alexander Moon, considered by some to be a genius. That is correct, said Moon. And someone the CIA once destroyed, said Patch. Everyone knows about the operation against Kennedy in Los Angeles. I know what they did to me years ago. I will adhere to what President Kennedy said about the CIA, and I will do it. Another one of your wild schemes, Moon? Asked Patch. I will splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. Patch rolled his eyes and turned to Meinkewitz. How can you move retrograde bubbles? You need enough energy to power the whole East Coast, Ray. No, Patch. Focused energy. What, nuclear? Asked Patch, glancing at Moon. If you wish. The first blast at Hiroshima was 16 kilotons, Patch. But if you focus even a small amount of power at the subatomic level, and then control it, you'll move bubbles wherever you desire. You do not need prodigious power. Is that true, Ray? Well, that's what the equations say, and the computers predict. We don't want the Russians to have this technology. Right now, the Russians want other things. The JFK report, said Moon. How do you know about that? Asked Patch. Defectors, said Meinkewitz. What about Isolde Volkov? Asked Patch, and Moon laughed. What's so funny, Moon? Volkov and a group of Russians visited us in May, Patch. They're aware of your mission, Natalie, said Moon, squinting. They want us to blackmail the U.S. government with that report. Patch turned to Moon. We don't know where this man Bellini is or if he killed Volkov. You're assuming that Volkov murdered Gerard, said Moon. I say they were both murdered by the sons of bitches at the CIA. You don't know that, Moon. You just hate the CIA. And you don't after what they did to both Kennedys? You're wasting time, said Patch. Moon spoke in a lower voice. They got Sirhan into the ancient mystical order of the Rosicrucis and deep, deep hypnosis with Dr. Bryan, who had an office in L.A. I know, 'cause he worked on me. Patch moved up to the larger man. We know where that office is. He has contacts, Patch, said Meinkewitz. I have your intel, Patch. Gerard was with the whore right here in Paris when she heard him mention Bellini to Isolde Volkov. She told me, and I told her I never heard of Bellini. What would you suggest we do now? Asked Natalie. Oh, we have a plan, said Meinkewitz. We let him think we have the report. Who is they? Asked Patch. The U.S. government and the Russians. No one will buy that, grumbled Patch. They'll buy it enough not to kill us, said Meinkewitz. How do I find Bellini, Ray? Go back to the river where they found Gerard and where he was poisoned. Or a restaurant, said Natalie. And witnesses to Volkov being run down. Does where she was run down mean anything? Was she on her way to meet Bellini? Asked Moon. Patch pinched the bridge of his nose. Reluctantly, I agree with what you're saying. How do we get the word out about the phony scenario that we have the report? Easily done, Patch, easily done, said Moon. We'll make the arrangements through my contacts to return to the United States incognito. Right now, we all have to leave this place, said Patch. Well, we're registered at the St. Romulus Hotel, said Meinkewitz, in room 616, okay? We're going to scout around and we'll meet you tonight. Patch, these people are playing for keeps, said Meinkewitz. So are we, Ray, said Patch. So are we. Patch talked Meinkewitz and Moon into staying in the hotel, lest they be tracked down having left Switzerland. Maybe they could create a story of how Patch was in possession of the report. After asking about Volkov in dozens of restaurants, they walked along the river drinking coffee and munching on pastries. By now, Finch must have been in Paris, and Patch was no further along in finding the report. According to Andre, de Gaulle's people continued to deny there ever was a report. They returned to the salon after lunch, and between appointments, Michel told them that the Russian lady, Miss Isolde, asked how far the cemetery was. Cemetery? Asked Natalie. The Père Le Champ Cemetery. She wished to see the mausoleum of Elisabeth Demidov, mademoiselle. Descended from a Russian industrialist. Why is that? Asked Natalie. Ah, you do not know about this one. Elizabeth died at age 40, 1818. She left millions of francs to the person who had spent 1 year and a day in her alabaster tomb alongside her body, which is right there in a crystal coffin. Oh my God, said Natalie. The tomb walls and ceiling are covered in mirrors, so the fool who tries to stay in the tomb for a year will always see the dead woman. Why would anyone try that? Asked Patch. Whoever did could read by the light by the head of the coffin. The rules stated that they would converse with no one for that year, not even the food server who would arrive once a day. That's the most damn fool thing I ever heard of, said Patch. There's more. In the evening when the gates are locked, whoever is engaged in this insanity can walk around the Père Lachaise cemetery grounds. Natalie held her wrist. Was she going to attempt? Oh, no. She was just fascinated by the production, as she called it. Patch tipped her. Thank you, Michel. Oui, I'm glad I could help. When they were on the sidewalk and the traffic flowed by, Patch turned to Natalie. Find it ironic that Volkov was run down outside that cemetery yesterday morning. Very odd. Natalie, what the hell was she doing in that cemetery, and who was the driver of the Porsche? Père Lachaise Cemetery, Paris, France. Walking along the necropolis roads in the eerie orange sunlight produced spindly shadows along the stone houses of the dead. It was hard not to believe that the lost spirits haunted the ether and the souls of the living. Patch gazed up at the elevated stone edifice at the base of Elizabeth Stroganoff Demidov. Stone pillars capped the base like the temple of a goddess. You couldn't get me up in that tomb for 1 minute, let alone a year. What does this have to do with the report? Maybe Gerard somehow stored the report up there, said Natalie. Well, that would be clever, but if he did, he wouldn't have told Volkov, because she would kill him and then get the report. She did kill him, Patch. Gerard simply wasn't that stupid. I think she visited this tomb as a cover because of her Russian connection. She was told that by her handlers, said Patch. But the report could be in there. Unlikely. But you're on to something, Natalie. If Volkov believed that Gerard may have buried that report in a grave, she could have probed the grounds, repeatedly returning until she figured it out. But she was killed. Did she or did she not find the report or know where it was? Bellini could have been driving that Porsche. He may have double-crossed Gerard or even killed him. Patch ran his open hand down his tired, sweaty face. We're not spies. Who knows? Well, what I do know, that as a spy, Volkov wouldn't have come over to this tomb as a tourist or a sightseer or even as a Russian. The fact that she was here and then, days later, was run down outside the entrance, that report has to be buried here. I agree, Patch. But how many tombs are in here? What do we do? Just start ripping things apart? This could take years to figure out, Natalie. We need a book or a guide to this place. We'll come back tomorrow. Moon and Meinkewitz had papers tacked to the hotel room and diagrams on blank white sheets of paper. Patch collapsed onto the sofa. Well, what did you find out, Patch? Asked Meinkewitz, setting down his pen. A whole bunch of nothing, Ray. But I do believe that the report is at the Père Lachaise cemetery, buried in a grave. Well, how'd you come up with that conclusion? Volkov made repeated expeditions to the cemetery over the last month and a half and was killed outside the main entrance, said Natalie. That cemetery is enormous, said Meinkewitz. You'll never find the report, which was probably the late Mr. Gerard's intent. Wrong, Ray, said Moon. Patch had still not adjusted to the milder version of Moon and did not trust him. There are sonic instruments that are experimental. We know the approximate size of the report is 9 by 12. Come on, Moon, said Patch. Even with your sonic machine, no one's going to allow us to be scanning graves. I have a problem with that. I'll make the call if everyone agrees. Moon left the room. The call came into the suite phone around 5 a.m. Meinkewitz, already at work at the table, took the call. Well, how is that possible, Andre? I understand that, said Meinkewitz, raising his voice. Well, how the hell did it happen? God help us. Yeah, I will. Patch stepped into the main room. Was that Andre? Patch, your apartment. What about it? 15 people dead, burnt to the ground. Patch stood with his mouth open. They have no respect for life, only their power. Well, that is self-evident, Patch, said Moon in the doorway. And they'll pay a tremendous price for their murderous ways. Right now, Moon, we need to find that report and expose these people. We need to get the map or guide to Père Lachaise cemetery and Andre's people to make sure we're safe in that cemetery, said Natalie from the other bedroom doorway. Well, we have to look for relatively fresh dirt or tombs that have been open, said Meinkewitz. We'll not only send the garrison investigation into the stratosphere, but it will take down the cabal that killed Bobby and Jack. By late morning, Patch had written the numbers for 78 possible sites. Moon and Meinkewitz walked in the opposite direction. They checked the locks and the iron bars. Some of the heavy stone tombs and memorials were open. Elizabeth Stroganoff-Demidov's tomb was not accessible, but because Volkov had visited so many times, Patch checked the base along with Natalie, but there were no anomalies in the stone. Patch began to question as to why Volkov was even in the cemetery. 3 of Andre's unmarked vehicles were parked by both entrances. Andre walked alone across the street after Patch and Natalie brought lunch from a local cafe to the entrance. You may have to leave the area, said Andre. Finch has his people checking the hotels. Let him check, said Patch. They are presently checking a hotel 2 blocks away, Patch. Then if they come in here, we'll hide in one of the tombs, said Meinkewitz. Patch panned the street. Andre, if they come in here, we'll need weapons. Officially, I can do nothing. Unofficially, I will see what I can do. Time is not on our side. Twilight brought a creepy resonance as the bewitching hour for the dead was upon them. Maybe it was just the pressure on everyone searching Père Lachaise or having Baker Finch sweeping the city with marching orders to kill all of them. Leaving the cemetery when the gates closed would put them in further jeopardy when they searched again tomorrow. Just as the attendants were walking up the road to lock the cemetery, Moon and Meinkewitz moved quickly toward Patch and Natalie from behind. "Patch, we're going to have to stay here tonight." "How the hell are we going to do that, Ray?" asked Patch, looking around the murky grounds. "This place will be locked solid," said Natalie.
Bellini.
"What are you talking about, Moon?" asked Patch. "Bellini. We found him, Patch." "What?" asked Patch, looking toward the advancing attendants. "Patch, Bellini was a composer of operas. He died at age 33 in 1835. Patch looked at Natalie. "Of course." "Listen up," said Meinkewitz. "His body was moved back to Italy in 1876. The tomb is empty." "Oh my God, Gerard knew that and he slipped the report into the empty tomb." "Well, we need to get back in here before Finch finds us," said Patch. "Monsieur, I must escort you out." "Ah, of course," said Meinkewitz. "We apologize. It's easy to become involved with history here. We'll come back tomorrow." Chapter 39. Père Lachaise Cemetery, Paris, France, June 29, 1968, 2:49 a.m. Meinkewitz and Natalie were in a compact Renault in the side alley that overlooked the main entrance to Père Lachaise Cemetery 100 feet away. Patch and Moon entered the cemetery in dark clothing and backpacks. With night gear and M16 rifles Moon had procured after he and Meinkewitz arrived from Switzerland. Using fold-up ladders, they climbed over a darkened portion of the wall and used the cemetery guide to find Bellini's empty tomb. Patch panned the cemetery with night goggles. The earphone in his right ear beeped once, which was the signal from Natalie that everything was clear. He looked over the larger Dr. Moon and nodded. Using small crowbars, they pierced the ground and began pushing the lower base upward. Patch felt his heart beating in his temples where the goggles fit in place. He was stunned that Finch had not continued the sweep of Paris during the night and accepted it as a lucky break. The large monument moved. Maybe Gerard and others had already opened the tomb during the last year. Volkov had not figured out the Bellini angle, or the dirt around the base would have shown signs of disruption. Patch placed a pipe at an angle as Moon shined the flashlight downward into the tomb. For a second he feared that history was wrong and maybe Bellini was still here. Center on the marble was a metal box with red and black wires looped over the top.
"God damn it,"
said Moon in his pre-therapy grumbling voice.
"The damn thing is wired. If you open that box, Patch, it'll blow us sky high."
"We've got no choice," said Patch as the earphone beeped twice. "Damn, what now?"
"Could be a routine patrol."
"Let's get it the hell out of here right now."
"What if it's nitro?"
asked Moon. "Looks like a conventional bomb." "That report details how and why JFK was killed. We have to get it out of here now before Finch starts his sweep of the city. Getting that report to Garrison is an entirely different operation."
"Be it far from me to pass up an opportunity for risky behavior."
"Put that on your tombstone," whispered Patch, fully aware he could be wrong and the tripwire would activate the nitro. They used a longer crowbar to lift the base further. Moon then realigned the two steel pipes. Patch shined the light into the tomb again. He nodded at Moon and then squeezed through the opening. "Get back, Moon, in case it blows."
"I'm not moving."
"Suit yourself." Patch stared at the plastic box. The dull black injected plastic had a seam around the bottom of the 8x10 box. There were no markings, and the new red and black wires entered both ends. Because the box had a depth of over a foot, that indicated the presence of a bomb or dynamite stick placed at the top of the report. How did Gerard plan to open the box without activating the bomb? About a half a minute later, Moon called his name.
"Patch! Patch!"
"Shut up!" Patch convinced himself that just moving the box would not activate the explosive, and combined with his annoyance with Moon, he squatted down and placed his fingers around the ends of the box. The red wire brushed his right hand. He slowly lifted the report upward off the white marble and slid it into the dirt around the opening. Then he climbed out and rocked his body across the dirt. He did not see Moon. He again picked up the box and placed it behind a foot-high wrought iron fence. Moon, 100 feet away, retreated along the outside wall and then crossed back to Patch at the graveside. The two men worked in unison and lowered the monument securely back in place. Then Patch began tamping the dirt and brushed the loose dirt off the stone. They loaded up the tools into the backpacks. Patch positioned the pack on his back and then gingerly carried the box, which weighed no more than 5 pounds. First, he followed Moon up the chain ladder and then removed a smaller pack from inside. He dropped the tools to Moon and then returned for the box. In 5 minutes, they were inside the Renault. "How do we disarm this, Ray?" he asked. Meinkewitz studied the wire configuration. "My guess is that Gerard had a device or a circuit that would render the bomb useless." "We can't take a chance of that box on a plane," said Natalie. "We're going to have to," said Patch. "We'll have to carry it on. If it's in a suitcase, the jarring might loosen the wires." "What about contacting Denali?" Patch shook his head. "Denali is taking time off, and how do we risk it? Finch is closing in for the kill. No doubt he has people at the airport." "How about Andre?" asked Meinkewitz from the front. "That's a crapshoot." "Not necessarily," said Patch, thinking back to when he and Meinkewitz first met Andre. "Natalie, call Andre's office. Use your regular voice. Leave a message for him. Mushroom." "What does that mean?" "You'll see." Natalie, as dawn broke over the Seine, placed the call and left a simple message for the inspector. "Now what?" asked Meinkewitz. "Now we'll have some breakfast and walk along the river and enjoy Paris for the last few minutes we're here." "I hope you know what you're doing, Patch," said Meinkewitz as Natalie paid for a newspaper at the sidewalk stand. "Oh, God, what is it?" asked Patch. Her tears made no sense. "Denali." "What about him?" "His plane. It's missing." Patch grabbed the paper and saw a black and white photograph in the lower corner of the newspaper. Congressman Henry R. Meigs. Meigs is Denali. "You knew this." "I was sworn to secrecy," she said as he held her. "I don't know French." "I do," said Moon, taking the paper. "Congressman Henry R. Meigs, on a political trip to Alaska with Representative Norman Mason, is listed as missing when his small plane failed to respond to multiple attempts to contact it after he failed to land in Breckenridge, Alaska Thursday night. Meigs, once thought of as a future Speaker of the House of Representatives, is now at the center of a massive statewide search." Moon looked up. "How many more will die? How many more?" Patch held Natalie and stared at the smooth water down to the next bridge's reflection. "Let's get back to the car." "Where are we going, Patch?" "Did you know his identity, Ray?" "I did not. But if I did, I would have done exactly what Natalie's done. We're going to meet Andre in the Louvre's ground gallery, Denon Wing, on the mushroom chairs." Grand Gallery, Louvre Museum, Paris, France, June 30th, 1968. "There's nothing left," said Natalie, sitting next to Patch under the indirect light of the extended Grand Gallery. Tears left her cheeks as she continuously shook her head. "Where do we turn?" "This is a war, Natalie," said Patch, his hand on the knapsack containing the box and the bomb and the report as tourists moved along, producing a gentle hum of conversation. "They're all going to be put out of business," said Moon to his right. "Now how the hell does that happen?" asked Meinkewitz. "Scatter them to the wind." "Let's just get to New Orleans," said Patch as he stood and surveyed the gallery. Then he checked his watch. Andre must have gotten the message. "If we get to the States," said Meinkewitz, "they'll track us down." "Let them," said Patch. "We have the goods." "We have the goods with a bomb on top," replied Meinkewitz. "Just let Andre's people disarm it." "And lose our leverage, Ray?" "You blow that up and we all die." "Not necessarily," said Patch as he spotted Andre far down the gallery, moving quickly in a short leather coat. "Here he comes." Everyone turned as Patch placed the knapsack on his back. Andre arrived about 30 seconds later. After shaking hands with everyone, he turned to Patch. "I am sorry to announce that Denali..." "We know what happened, Andre," said Meinkewitz. I would say that you people are in grave trouble. I am here on my home turf, and you are not. We understand all that, said Patch. He looked around but didn't see Moon. Where's Moon? I don't see him anywhere, said Meinkewitz, looking around. They moved up to the next set of mushroom seats and they all remained standing. I am impressed that you remembered what I told you about asking for help, said Andre. When it comes to my options, my memory's infallible, Andre. We need to leave the country easily without any fanfare or passports. It's a matter of life and death. Finch's sweep is closing in. He may back off when he doesn't find you, said Andre. You need to stay here and find that Gaulle report. Andre, what would you say if I told you I have the report? He raised his brow and said nothing for the longest time. I would need to file an official paperwork. Not a good idea. The report is in this knapsack, said Patch. Oh, really? Oh, yes. Let me guess, you want to go to New Orleans? That is correct. I can make one signal to my men and take that report, said Andre. Patch opened the knapsack. And I can pull one wire on this surrounding box and blow you all to kingdom come. Andre's eyes opened wide. Well, I see. I will commandeer a plane, yes. May require a few hours. No. Get us out of here to the landing strip where we arrived. It's over 5,000 miles to New Orleans. A C-130 has a range of 2,300 miles. I get it. Get us a 707. 707? Are you crazy? Probably. Fly it to Newfoundland and then to New Orleans. Just to get a 707, the money to fly that plane would be extraordinary. Then you will inform that whoever first developed that report for de Gaulle, that we are about to open up the truth in the Kennedy assassination. I don't care how you do it, Andre. Get the plane. Why don't you just let my people disarm the bomb or whatever it is you claim to have in the knapsack? Patch opened the knapsack straps down to his arms and opened the bag wider. Okay, I assume Gerard must have armed the container, but I will not call anyone to get a 707. It will become an incident and we will all be dead. Bring us to the airport. I will make arrangements to get this to the investigation in New Orleans. It will ruin the CIA and everyone else involved in killing Kennedy. Andre stared at him with an intensity that made Patch even more determined. Well, it's not going to work, Patch. You cannot bring an explosive on a plane. There's no way you are going to get a plane, and even if you do, now Finch has the entire military and intelligence apparatus aimed directly at you. He pressed his lips and slowly nodded. I have an idea. We will have to outwit Finch at his own game. What's the plan? Asked Patch. I have my own car out in front of the museum. It will accommodate everyone. If Dr. Moon is gone, we will find him later. I will also worry about the consequences later. You are a courageous man, Andre. Thank you. No, I am a smart man. Chapter 40, Utah Beach, July 3rd, 1968. The red and white police helicopter hovered over the flat, solitary beach where the amphibious American Army troops had landed slightly over 24 years ago on June 6th, the same month and day that Senator Robert Kennedy had died in Los Angeles. On Utah Beach, they fought for justice in the face of Nazi tyranny, thought Patch, still clutching the knapsack with the JFK report and the surrounding security bomb. Gerard had not planned on dying, and the bomb was still active. Inside, Natalie held Patch's hand as a trawler appeared on the horizon. Andre's plan involved leaving France via his trusted contacts. Crossing the channel to Britain was the first leg of the journey to Norway, where they could find a permanent place to live. They will send a boat to the shore where we will be picked up. He checked his watch. Approximately 30 minutes from now. The weather will not be a hindrance to travel to Southampton. Final plans for the trip to Norway are incomplete. The primary move here is to shed the shadow of one Baker Finch. And the report, said Patch. Phineas Beauregard will be contacted as Denali's plane is still missing. The report will be brought to garrison. They murdered Denali, said Patch. You know it and I know it. I would agree with that assessment. The helicopter touched down in the soft beach sand and the blade slowly came to a stop as they waited for the trawler to sail closer to the shore. Patch and Natalie stood out on the beach in the hot July sun. Then he turned to Andre and Meinkewitz in the open helicopter bay. Why is there no one on this beach, Andre? Don't you find that strange? Andre stood with his hands on his hips, the sun reflecting on his polarized glasses. He panned the shore with a pair of field glasses and then called out to Patch. Yes, there should be tourists on this beach. We expected that, but notified the park people that we would be here for less than an hour. Perhaps they've cleared the beach for that time. Patch visibly spotted the linear trawler still a ways out in the ocean. What do you think, Natalie? I think I'd be happy once we're sailing for England, she said, looking back to the police helicopter. Me too. Patch opened the knapsack out of habit. The ignition wires were still looped around the plastic box. He inhaled the clean, salty beach air. When we get to New Orleans, I may request to meet with Jim Garrison directly. I don't trust many people after all we've seen. Wouldn't it be nice, Patch, to be out here in a blanket with a picnic lunch and just take in the rays of the sun? Before Patch could answer, a large-scale military olive green Chinook helicopter like the ones he had seen in Vietnam rose over the German emplacement from World War II. Through a loudspeaker, as the wind from the blades picked up on the beach, a voice shook the beach. Patch's heart beat quickly.
Do not return the police helicopter. Place your knapsack in the sand and back up toward the dunes.
Oh my God. Put your arm around me. Walk in a zigzag manner. That helicopter is bouncing around. Then Finch came over the megaphone again.
This is the end for you, Patch. We have specialized rifles aimed at both of you at this very moment.
I'll pull the wires if you fire at us. For 30-plus seconds, the helicopter sat above them. Finch resumed his rant.
You can't win this, Patch. Kennedy had to go. It was the general consensus with the people who make things move in the world. It wasn't just one agency. It was the last section of the Gaulle report. 20 concentric circles of the plot to assassinate President John F. Kennedy. All the interconnected players. Every circle was a rabbit warren, with a never-ending maze away from the surreptitious links to the other circles. We already had the first copy of the report, and you now have provided the Gerard copy. No one will ever know how the plot was constructed, and at least you two will die together.
Patch pulled Natalie along as he backtracked over the sand. Bullets pelted the beach. Meinkewitz held an M16 rifle. Andre, there are no missiles in this thing? No, this is a police helicopter. Meinkewitz aimed the gun at the Chinook. That fool Finch is gonna shoot Patch and Natalie. There is nothing I can do. Get up in the air and ram the goddamn chopper, for God's sakes. Patch turned toward the police helicopter at least 200 feet from them. Jesus Christ, fire at the Chinook! The animated Patch ripped the box out of the knapsack. Meinkewitz heard Finch on the loudspeaker again as he feared for his friend's life.
Set the box on the sand.
Finch lifted the megaphone higher but shielded himself in the doorway.
Both Kennedys were traitors. You blame it all on us, but they were actively dealing with our enemies. We saved this country from the Reds. We're in charge now. I want you to know that before we kill you.
Try to shoot him, said Meinkewitz, raising his rifle.
You're the traitor, Finch.
Finch's voice crackled.
Who else is in your network? We want you to work for us.
Patch's words rejoined with history and those who pushed back against tyranny and fell dead on this very beach.
Go to hell, you rat bastard.
Can't let them get that report, Andre, shouted Meinkewitz. We are going to have to leave before they fire missiles at us, cried Andre. Get my friend off the damn beach. We are going to have to surrender or be blown up. The Chinook turned in midair to align itself with the police helicopter. More bullets hit the police helicopter. Finch's soldiers were lowered on ropes and covered for the one man who picked up the box. Instantly, with great precision, they were all hauled back up into the Chinook. Then the Chinook looked as if it were slowly turning toward the police helicopter. Finch held out the protected box with the report inside as if he were offering the report to the gods. He said something to his men, and they both opened up on Patch and Natalie with the full force of their rifles. Both of them were hurled onto Utah Beach's sandy berm. Meinkewitz prepared to fire his rifle as an explosion ripped the Chinook, and the bulge of that explosion moved horizontally as the helicopter was in free fall toward the beach. Then something else was triggered. Maybe the armaments on board and the remains of the helicopter meshed with an intense orange fireball that rocked like a tsunami wave on the ocean. The sifted remnants, along with a few blades, disappeared into a bonfire in the sand. For several minutes, Meinkewitz buried his head between his knees. The arming device was inside the box, said Andre, speaking for the first time. Meinkewitz spoke in a whisper as the two men stared at the burgeoning fire. Natalie is dead. My trusted friend is gone forever. Angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom his love commits me here, ever this day be at my side, to light and guard, to rule and guide. Amen. Epilogue. Jeffrey's Farm, Centerville, Vermont, August 9th, 1974. Meinkewitz and Phinney drove the Jeep down the dirt road along the cornfield. The warm air swirled around inside the Jeep as he played an 8-track of City of Lights recorded in Paris 3 years ago. He crunched his cigar and smiled as he marveled at the rural surroundings. Patch would have liked this album, the first one Morrison made with the Doors since he permanently moved to Paris. Meinkewitz did not understand why Morrison didn't die in Paris. It may have had something to do with a conversation Morrison had with Rosselli at the TV studio in LA, where Morrison signed an autographed card for Handsome Johnny. I hear Nixon was very upset with some of his aides for attending a Doors concert in D.C. last night, said Phinney. Called Morrison a degenerate. I have a funny feeling about Nixon. It has something to do with Morrison. Meinkewitz never told Phinney how Morrison was supposed to die in this timeline. Nixon will get over it, said Phinney. Besides, Morrison says he's a poet now. Right. August 9th, 1974. I can't think of anything important happening today, Phinney. Just another day, answered Phinney. Meinkewitz turned and headed toward Wilton and Becky's spread below the hills. Wilton had all 3 boys working the fields during the summer months, just as he had when he and his brothers were young. Meinkewitz slowed near the maple sugar barn, which would be running next spring. Wilton, slightly graying on the sideburns, gave Meinkewitz a quick wave. His older boy Jack had worked on fixing something fouled up with the red tractor. Becky, in her apron, leaned out the front door. Good morning, Ray. Phinney? Good morning. Lynn says she'll bake another blueberry pie for Sunday, Becky. Nobody makes a hot blueberry pie out of the oven like Lynn, Ray, said Becky as Meinkewitz got out of the Jeep in the backyard, leaving the keys inside. 15 minutes ago, Meinkewitz saluted Dr. Mike's white-lettered black MIA flag, spoke out loud to the granite tombstones inside the iron fence atop the hill. He told Patch that Dr. Alexander Moon had flown an empty 747 jetliner stuffed with some type of explosive into CIA headquarters as Armstrong was stepping out on the lunar surface in 1969. No remnant of the jet was ever found, or the remains of Dr. Alexander Moon. And the CIA building in Langley was left intact. The press called it the Area 51 in D.C. flight. You two been up to the cemetery? Asked Wilton, studying Meynkewitz's face. How did you know? Asked Meinkewitz. Every time you visit Captain Kincaid and Lieutenant Tomkins, you both have that faraway look, said Meinkewitz, guiding Wilton and Phinney into the maple sugar shack in his office to the right. We live out our lives in peace up here in Vermont, don't we? My family has 6 generations of Jeffreys in Centerville. Damn right. Things happen at the higher levels of power with the movers and shakers that we can't do anything about. Suppose you're right, Ray. As for Phinney and me, and you, Wilton, we've got work to do, haven't we? Wilton slowly smiled as he placed another X on the August calendar. His crow's peaks tightened. We live out our lives and work hard, Ray, into the future. Meinkewitz gazed out the open window toward the tree-lined hillside where Patch and Natalie were buried. Inexplicably into the future and dreaming about the sacred past.